I invited Dr. Juliana Hansen to join us today to talk about the perioperative use of antibiotics in breast reduction surgery. Dr. Hansen is Division Chief and Associate Professor of Surgery at OHSU in Portland, Oregon, and she currently teaches the instructional course for maintenance of certification and breast reduction. Welcome, Dr. Hansen.
Thank you.
Tell us how your participation in the instructional course has modified your practice.
Well, in preparing for that course, it gave me the much needed opportunity to review all of our existing data. And there are studies which give us our current best practices for antibiotic use. And that has certainly gotten me to think about what I do more and changed my practice. So prior to reviewing all of our existing data, I just didn't pay that much attention to antibiotics. All of my patients got a pre-op dose of IV antibiotics, and all of my patients were getting some variable post-op course depending on what the residents prescribed. Reviewing the data gave me the confidence to suggest to my residents that there really was no evidence to show that long-term post-op antibiotics were beneficial. And so I have changed my practice, and now all of my patients get a single IV dose and no post-operative antibiotics.
And so how has that impacted what you teach your residents?
Prior to this time, my teaching of breast reductions for my residents really focused on technique and pedicles and keeping up with the newest types of breast reductions. What I realized in going over this data was part of teaching my residents how to do breast reductions also has to include perioperative management of things like antibiotics and what to send our patients home with. So that's really impacted and rounded out my teaching of them for this type of procedure.
So working in any type of practice where you have colleagues, one of the challenge often is, even despite the evidence, is to get consensus with your colleagues. Otherwise, it can get very confusing for the residents. Dr. X does this and Dr. Y does that. Have you been able to get consensus among your faculty to use the best evidence, or?
It's interesting that the residents can be very helpful in that process as well. Though I educate our whole group and all of my faculty on what I have learned through a thorough review of our data, the residents can provide that information in different ways by questioning each attending when they're doing the same procedure with different attendings. And that's really helped to get the other attendings also thinking about what they do and justifying what they do. Currently at OHSU, there's 4 of us who do breast reductions. 3 of us use just an IV dose of antibiotics, and 1 attending still is using an IV dose and 6 days of postoperative antibiotics.
When we see this evidence data, we tend to wonder if perhaps there aren't exceptions and some unanswered research questions. What are the sorts of things that you would like to see the society, the board do to gather additional information so the evidence becomes stronger or clearer?
Sure. Well, we know that in the studies we have, even the lowest infection rate among some of the groups of patients after breast reduction is about 2%, and we'd love to get that down even lower. I think what we need to study from here is finding those high-risk patients who may in fact benefit from perioperative antibiotics. Obesity, diabetes, history of MRSA infections, or current harboring of MRSA bacteria may be factors that will suggest that those patients would benefit from perioperative antibiotics, including post-op doses.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure our readers will enjoy and appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.